Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I am married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need. Do you want to change that about you? That is the big question. And of course you do. You want to do it with integrity. You want to do it with intimacy. You want to do it with intention. And that's one of the reasons we have Taylor Chambers coming on to talk about how to work on becoming pornography resilient and find liberation and freedom from addiction, but not necessarily in the normal way. That's what I love about this, is that he has come up with some ideas that actually suggest that applying regular recovery tools may make things worse. But I digress. We'll wait for him to come on the show. Let me talk to you a little bit about me. I told you last week that I was recording in a studio, Help Her Heal. I got that book recorded. Now I am waiting for the edits to come back, and then what I typically do is spend about 6 hours listening to it, making sure that there aren't mistakes, making sure that the engineers have caught everything, which they never have. No offense to them, but I catch things that they don't, and so then I mark them, and we re-edit them, and then it's as if you've got Carol the Coach talking to you about the empathy workbook for sex addicts to help their wives, their partners heal. And that, of course, is Help Her Heal. Now, many of you have heard Help Them Heal because I did do that as an audible. And my worksheets aren't that spectacular, but I have a feeling the worksheets for Help Her Heal, which is going to be done by a graphic artist, are going to be great. So I'm just super, uber excited. And as I was brushing my teeth this week, I think it was on Saturday, I was watching the news, and lo and behold, my recording studio came on as a news segment. It's called a Round Table, and it was really pretty funny. They're now absolutely the biggest recording studio in Indy. They have the best equipment. And they were talking about that and why they decided to expand in the Midwest, in Indianapolis, Indiana. So I learned something about the recording studio. I had just spent 2 evenings, although I booked 3. I got it read in 2. That means, actually, there are 490 minutes of reading materials, and then, of course, you do the exercises. And most of you know that in Help Her Heal, we go into the trauma brain of a partner and how the executive functioning is compromised. And then the second chapter is on your feelings, because you can't help her to learn hers unless you've learned yours. And then Chapter 3 is on her needs, and although we talk about the 6 types of needs, the intellectual, the physical, the social, the emotional, the spiritual, what we also know is that primarily in that first phase, the partner betrayal, partners need to feel safety and stable. And the way you do that, if you're an addict, please listen to that. The way you build safety in is to really work diligently on talking about your recovery, talking about what you're learning about yourself. And I know this seems counterintuitive, but also talking about your struggles and your challenges. You know, you may think you're saving that for your sponsor, but the wife or the husband, depending on who the betrayed partner is, they want to know what's going on. You know, because they don't want to deal with this forever, and they want to know that you're working on things. So the basic needs are about communication. Communication about what you're learning, and communication about the relationship, how you're feeling. What are your thoughts about relational recovery? And then, of course, in addition to that, we talk about the fact that really there needs to be relational safety discussed between the two of you. What happens if you slip? What happens if you look at a provocative image? How can we make that work? How can the partner feel safer? And that's what a CSAT's about, a certified sex addiction therapist or a partner-sensitive therapist from APSATS. Or, my bias is ERCA, the Early Recovery Couples Empathy Model. How do we help couples talk about that? So that's what we do. And we really want to work diligently on trigger busting. And so in Help Her Heal, we talk about trigger busting and how you lean into those triggers as opposed to leaning out. And Chapter 5 is on empathy, and how do you develop empathy, and how do you put yourself in someone's perspective. I mean, that's hard to do, especially if you're feeling shame or guilt and you watch the trauma. So Chapter 5 is an important chapter, not to be excluded by Chapter 6, which is on the forms of communication, Chapter 7, which is on shame, resiliency, and handling conflict. And the list goes on and on. I hope that if you had the book and you couldn't get through it, I'll let you know when the Audible's out, and I hope you listen to it. It'll be like listening to one of my podcasts. This is all about information. That's why we have the podcast, and that's why we have different guests on, and that's why guests do summits. And today I am really excited to be having Taylor Chambers on, who has devoted his life to help men become porn resilient and to find freedom, and I put liberation from their addiction. But, Taylor, I said, you're doing this in a different kind of way. I mean, you've got some terminology I've never heard that is really exciting to me. Fearless sexuality, I love that. As well as you encourage the guys to look at how to get healthy and how to recover in maybe a little bit of a different way than your standard recovery speak. So welcome to Sex Help with Carol the Coach, and I just can't wait for you to share your wisdom with us today.
Yeah, hey, thanks. I'm really excited to talk and share some of these ideas. Obviously, the hope is that some people pick some things up that helps them move that next step on their journey. So. Yeah,
absolutely, and you really have devoted your life to helping men heal. I looked at your website. I didn't know did I see anything about helping women heal, or is your population pretty much all men?
Yeah, my work is primarily with men, and I will do some couples work, and a lot of my experience is in working with women. And so I apply some of these principles to them with some modifications, as you can imagine. But yeah, primarily with men.
Right, and I know that you have a heart for couples because you've actually asked me to speak on your summit. So as you talk today about some of the really interesting concepts and how you work with men and how you work with couples, I thought maybe you could talk about the summit too, because this isn't your first rodeo, is it?
No, yeah, the summit is a pretty fun experience, and for the last 3 years I've run the summit each year. And just briefly, it's a way of me getting together a bunch of the world's best experts on the topics of pornography, sexuality, wellness, marriage in this case. This year I'm focusing primarily on healing marriages that are dealing with pornography use. And so, it's a really exciting topic. And I feel like I'm getting away with something because I meet so many cool people and they get to share their ideas, and all of it really has a big impact on viewers. And it's I arrange it in such a way that people can access that material for free. And so I hope it's kind of a win-win-win all the way around. It's great for speakers to get in front of new people, for me to learn from other people, and of course the whole reason is we're wanting it to be almost kind of this like power-packed event. It's 3 days, and so we're taking those 3 days, a ton of different interviews, and the idea is for any couple who's stuck or struggling, by the end of that 3 days, you're going to have some new ideas, some new perspectives and tools that you can start implementing on to get to that next step of the journey. So that's a cool process.
Yeah, I know that's in some ways what having a podcast is all about. I mean, getting to talk to the experts and getting to see them in person. I'm looking at Taylor as we speak, even though this is an audio podcast, so that I can see him and so that we can dialogue as if we're in the same room together. And, again, your life's journey has taken you lots of different places. So can you share a bit about who you are, how you got into this work, and the work that you're primarily doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. And if sorry, I can share even the long version, so I think there's some interesting pieces to it. So the short version is I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I'm an online intimacy coach. And then the longer version of that is, before becoming a therapist, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with families and with marriages in particular. And so I went to my undergraduate school in family science, and then I went to my graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. And during those years of school, I dove into my own personal recovery work as it related to pornography use. And so as I found recovery and as I got married during those years, that obviously became an intense interest of mine. And so I pursued opportunities and training related to sexual addiction, pornography addiction, and some of those other things like codependency and betrayal trauma for partners. And then, in addition to other styles of therapy and other problems and other populations. But that was really my intense focus because I knew, firsthand some of the devastation and some of the rescue that could happen in those areas. And so, that occupied, the first 5 years of my career or so, again, among some other populations and some other styles of work. But I was with a group practice, And while I was with them, the practice, underwent drastic reorganization, change of ownership, and things like that. And the practice had been really focused on sexual and pornography addiction. And so when they reorganized, I took that as an opportunity to try some other things, and ended up focusing on, failure to launch population, meaning young men in particular who are struggling to get through university or join the workforce or other things. But just something very, very different. And it ended up being this, interesting mid-career break. So, I stepped away from the direct addiction work and was doing other styles of work. But in the background, I kept thinking about it. And I started to really reevaluate my personal theory of change, the therapy models that I favored, and trying to look at, well, how would those things be addressing pornography in a way that's different than my typical addiction training. And so, that's where I got a lot of new ideas or new ways. I say new, but, they're not necessarily brand new. They're just maybe more unique applications of healing work. And so, at this point, I still actually use a lot of traditional addiction interventions, and a lot of my clients are really aiming for that kind of work in many ways, but I also rely on those less commonly applied approaches to pornography, towards sexual concerns, and so forth. So, as a result, a lot of the people I do my best work with, I feel like, are those who have actually struggled to get into recovery or struggle to maintain recovery. Like they haven't quite landed or resonated with the addiction approach. Mm-hmm. And by me offering something slightly different with some of the same goals and some familiar, tools and so forth, a lot of them, find that they really appreciate a different perspective or a different way of looking at the issue and tackling it from different angles. So that's a little bit about how I got into it.
Yeah, you're a licensed marriage and family therapist, right?
That's
and
right.
Then you got your addictions training through
specifically through an organization called LifeStar. And so, a lot of the classic kind of work down from Patrick Carnes, with some, other applications. They utilized a lot of material from Brene Brown and Kristen Neff, and so these were figures that were very familiar to me and very important, and remain so, in fact. And then, from there I integrated other ideas and perspectives.
Yeah, I went in 2005, 6, and 7 through the CSAT training through ICAP, and I had a lot of LifeStar professionals in my class, and they were some of my favorite people. They really already knew a lot about addiction, and they were utilizing a lot of Patrick Carnes' materials, and I just really had a fondness for them. And then on top of it, one of the things I realized is that they really were working hard at not just adhering to a certain strategy, but creating and customizing programming for people. And so I can see where you fit very nicely into that situation. Now, give us an example, if you will, of something that you've modified, changed a bit. I know I said in the feeder when I was talking initially about you coming on that you really believe that some of the things that people may be doing and utilizing in their own recovery could work against them. So can you share one of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is that the stated intention for many individuals with addiction recovery processes is the outcome of sobriety. And so for me, I kind of take, that's actually not my main goal. And this is where I weave in some harm reduction approaches, which are different from addiction approaches. And But I do it softly because, I still hold that sobriety is actually a really fantastic and worthy goal. And in fact, I think there are certain aspects of the work that are going to be really tough to do if, we haven't looked at clearing out some of the unwanted behavior, like unwanted porn use or other unwanted sexual behavior. And so sobriety is really important. It's often a strategy, but when we too narrowly focus in on sobriety, it can make eliminating the behavior actually ineffective, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of times, sobriety doesn't come from a direct focus on don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Sobriety emerges from a whole host of, meeting our needs, developing community, and other things. And so when a client of mine is really focused on that goal, we might not actually spend a whole lot of time talking about how to cut the behavior down. We might start talking much more about, well, what do we build up and what are we doing instead? So whereas I think many people enter addiction recovery, they're coming into this work from a rock bottom perhaps or other painful circumstances. And so their question is, how do I make this stop? But my question is more along the lines of, why would you want it to stop? Meaning, like, what is the sobriety for? And so, a good reflection that I often rely on is, if you were to finish the sentence, like, I want to be sober so that blank, mm-hmm. that starts to give us a bigger picture or a larger goal that sobriety is in service of. And so I've got a lot of categories. Some of them are not related to sexuality at all. You might say, I want to be sober so that, I can make my music more effectively. Or, I want to be sober so that I can feel like I'm a better husband and father. Or I want to be sober so that, I can deepen my relationship with God or something along those lines. And then when I zoom out and stay on that focus of, but what's the bigger picture for sexuality? It's not I want to be sober so that I'm sober. I want to be sober so that I can feel secure in my sexuality. And so that's what I call fearless sexuality. And as it sounds, it's the place that you can arrive at where you are not afraid of losing control. You're not afraid of the next slip. You're not afraid of triggers or of, attractive people passing by on the street. If we're clearing out a lot of the fears that might be going on when this behavior is out of control, and that sometimes even if we're really focused on recovery work that's behavior elimination, we can still be really afraid of those same things. And so the fearless sexuality is slightly different in that it's just about feeling confident that you can say yes to the sexual experiences that you want and no to the sexual experiences that you don't want. And that means that you can kind of use that sexuality to build and create something wholesome and worthwhile in your life. And so, again, it's not counter to addiction work. It's not counter to sobriety. But it's a slightly different framing that I feel like might give some people more traction on moving toward that vision or moving toward that goal.
Well, and that butts up very nicely to Kristen Neff and her mindful compassion work and being curious and looking at things from a different perspective. And, he had mentioned that a lot of lifestyle work that he used to be a part of was Brene Brown, which we know is the queen of empathy. She's really helped people to learn what empathy really is. And then Kristen Neff is just one of the biggest gurus for mindfulness. And for me, I just got done with a supervision/community experience with Darren Ford. And Darren is a CSAT who also runs 3 mindfulness centers and is the publisher of all my books, as well as other books on addiction and partner betrayal from a mindfulness point of view. And so I love the fact that you are really utilizing a lot of those techniques with a lot of curiosity, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Kristen Neff in particular just had a profound impact on my relationship with myself. Mm-hmm. There was a certain point where I had done enough talking about, dropping shame, but her work really gave me the perspectives that I needed to just kind of like drop the old patterns that kept the self-criticism in place. So she had a profound impact on me. And again, so yeah, I definitely incorporate self-compassion as a major component of the work that I do. And then Darren Ford's work, I'm not as familiar with, although I think I've seen this stuff, and that mindfulness emphasis is spot on. Our field in general has really taken to mindfulness, which I think is a big step forward in how we address our thoughts and our feelings. And again, when I was in my own addiction recovery work, I accidentally did very non-mindful things to try and manage those experiences. And the mindfulness with its acceptance and its presence and the compassion that's involved with it, that really made a big difference. And so, yeah, I love that many are weaving more of that in. Plus, I'm a big fan of kind of more traditional. I love East Asian history. I visited Asia a couple of times, and so I really like the old, ancient versions of mindfulness, as well as our contemporary applications. And so, a lot of richness there.
Yeah, I can tell that it's not only that you've implemented these approaches, you exemplicate them, that they are you. And that is very reassuring to clients who come with a lot of baggage about their addiction and a lot of shame and guilt. I remember early on as a therapist, I was taught two things, which are counterintuitive to what we're talking about. One thing I was taught was that be careful about praising and encouraging your clients. If they have really low self-esteem, they'll think you're crazy because they won't be able to believe that you see that kind of strength in them. And I always remembered that, and because I'm an encourager, so I was always aware of watching the mannerisms of somebody when I said, wow, you're resilient. Yes, you've been through all of that, and you didn't kill yourself. You didn't, throw yourself off of you are living proof that anybody can go through anything and come out on the other side. The second thing I learned, which I thought was really interesting, is when I worked in group homes with kids and pretty tough kids that have been through the correctional facilities, and if I was missing something, if I was missing something, if something came up and it was lost, like my keys, for instance, to a facility, to a residential treatment facility, I went to my supervisor. I'm like, you're going to kill me. I've lost the keys. I can't believe it. I'm not. And he goes, who had the best time with you today? And I said, oh, Melissa did. I taught her how to play guitar. She was loving it. And he goes, go to Melissa, tell her you've lost your keys, tell her you think somebody took them, and ask her for your help. Now, he wasn't saying that so I would manipulate Melissa. He was saying that because it was very likely Melissa had sabotaged our time together because she was enjoying herself so much and she was feeling really good about who she was, and it was incongruent with who she had been told she was her whole life. And so I'd do things like that. I'd go to whoever had the best time and ask for their help, and within minutes, if that book was missing, I got it back. If those keys were missing, I got it back. I learned, A, to be more aware of my stuff, but 2, I learned how people who've grown up with heartache and in hard situations have a natural repellent to us believing in them. And so you work with addicts, and there is so much shame and guilt, and you work with couples, and you've been able to navigate that arena too. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on pornography isn't just a behavioral issue. What do you think it is, and how did we get wrapped up in pornography, and what does one need to do to detach from it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I do view it more as a relationship. And so I love your examples of, there was a problem to be solved. Let's locate the keys. But there was a relationship there to be mindful of. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. This is one of those shifts in perspective that I believe really helps drop shame, even though it's not directly shame resilience, it's not directly, building up self-esteem or anything like that, but it almost like accidentally drops any expectations of performance, which makes it less likely to be shame-based, right? So let me clarify that a little bit. So because of my training as a marriage and family therapist, really taking the, marriage and family therapists are often looking at things from what's called the systems perspective, and an overly simplified version of that is just looking at things as relationships, right? And how do pieces fit in with the whole? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that is what's going on behind the scenes with my thinking and my work with people. And so, yeah, I see everything as relationship. Like, you have a relationship to people, just like you have a relationship to chocolate or to 80s music, or how you relate to work, or, to the universe itself, right? And so, and sometimes that's simply symbolic, but I also think that's very practical. With sexuality, you've got a relationship to your sexuality. And so it really behooves you to examine that relationship and determine what kind of relationship you have, what kind of relationship are we dealing with here. And what I think a lot of people will find, whether they're, and this is not always the case, but many will find that whether it's before they get into addiction recovery, or even sometimes as a feature of their addiction recovery, they have a relationship to their sexuality that's characterized by shame, by disgust, by rage, by fear, right? I know that a lot of my recovery efforts were really fueled by, like, this is terrible, it's intolerable, I'm super upset that this is happening with my sexuality, viewing pornography, for example. I'm really afraid of, what that part of me might do at some point in the future. And so what I was doing was I was interacting with my sexuality through aggression, through repression of my desires or interests, through intolerance, through avoidance. And those were my initial strategies for getting sober, right? Kind of battling against this part of me that shouldn't be there was kind of the framing or the way of looking at it. And so, if we're looking at that as a relationship, and if I'm treating someone like that, what are they going to do in response? Well, sometimes they'll shut down and, kind of roll over and play dead or something like that. If that's true, then as soon as I'm not watching, then they're going to go scramble and get their needs met and get their business taken care of. With sexuality, that can look like really working strong recovery, being really intense about it. And then if there's a holiday, or if we get off routine, or if it's like, that kind of justification of like, I've been really good, I get to give myself a little break, right? Just a little comfort or whatever, which can lead to edging and then relapse or something. You can see when it's a relationship why that would make sense for it to happen that way. But, sexuality can also kind of counterattack through manipulation or rebellion or even domination of like, don't repress me. I will be here no matter what you say, or, hey, don't avoid me, right? I will insist that I'm hard to ignore or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I'm talking about a very toxic relationship. And, when you're in a relationship, you can't really eliminate the other person. And sometimes you can end the relationship and move on to something different in life. But, a lot of times elimination, that's called murder, right? We can't like get the person off of the map of our lives entirely in many cases. And so when we apply that to unwanted sexual behavior, it's still functional to see it as a problem that we solve, but much more so I'm trying to be less about stopping the bad behavior and more about healing the relationship with sexuality, healing your understanding of sexuality, forgiving it, integrating it, partnering with your sexuality. And I'm focusing on sexuality in our discussion now, but it's not always about sexuality because, as we know, sexual addiction is not about sex, right? It's about many of our childhood wounds, the ways in which we relate to other people and take care of ourselves. And so those relationships matter as well. But, for me, this feels a little more workable because very few people have truly eliminated their sexuality. But, countless people have developed really positive relationships with their sexuality and made some good, negotiated a good working relationship with, how they pursue and enjoy sex and how they choose not to. So.
Got it. And again, I love that mindset because it really frees one up to not be so tethered to doing it a certain way, doing it right versus wrong, all sorts of things. Taylor, you've got so much going on, and I know that your website has a lot of information, blogs and all sorts of things. If I'm correct, it's www.taylorchambers.com?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, and then you have a master class. Can you speak 30 seconds to what that master class is?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's got a funny title. I guess I enjoy funny titles, but it's called Soberish. And so, and you can go directly to that at taylorchambers.com/masterclass. In the near future here, if listeners are listening pretty early on, taylorchambers.com will actually display not my typical homepage, but the event coming up, this Porn Resilient Marriage Summit. But the Soberish Masterclass is, rather than how to get sober, it's kind of how can I help people to be in the process of working toward becoming sober? Like, how do we handle that middle ground where we're not quite there yet? Mm-hmm. These same principles are useful for people who want to moderate porn use rather than eliminate it altogether. And so it's taking a look at if we're reducing pornography, and if our focus isn't on eliminating the behaviors, what else do we do? And it provides, I've got a list of 40 goals that aren't sobriety that are still worthwhile in this process, and kind of educating on how our focus can sometimes backfire and how we can do it differently so that we can get some traction. So.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, as we are wrapping up the summit that you're putting together, your third annual, right? How can people find out about the summit? Like you said, it's free.
Yeah.
So share a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So people can find it depending on the time that they're looking. So let's see. I'll try to get my dates right. So the event starts from September 3rd to September 5th, 3-day event, and it's free. So when you register for it, you'll get some emails from me that give you interviews. So day 1 has a batch of interviews that you can watch at any time on that day. Same for day 2 and day 3. And so to register and get access to those emails and those interviews for free, people can go to taylorchambers.com, and we'll have a landing page there for people to register. It'll be very clear. You'll get a lot more information about it if you just want to learn more first. So you can look. I've got a video. We've got a ton of information. But you'll be able to just hit the button that says register now, and you'll be able to access it that way. If you're not seeing it, it might be because that'll open up 2 weeks before the 3rd, so mid-August to the early September. That's when we're taking a look at making that available. So check back, back half of August for that, and then you'll be able to sign up.
So remember, that's www.taylorchambers.com. And, you can always contact me at Carol the Coach. If you forget his name, you want access to that summit, I'm going to be speaking on IRCA, early recovery couples empathy work, and you're just going to have a whole host of information for addicts, for partners, for couples, for mindfulness. You're just going to do it all, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. You can tell I like differing perspectives. So I actually draw people from sex therapy that are more progressive and traditional addiction work and everybody in between. I've got some guys looking at it from more of a physiological angle, from a mindfulness angle, from a family angle. So I'm trying to cover this from so many different angles because it'll help people to get out of that stuck place because something's going to, strike home and really make a difference.
Absolutely. Well, the best of luck. We'll talk soon, and check out his website. He's got a lot of interesting things. I think that master class is something everybody should take. Thank you so much, Taylor, and good luck to you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Carol. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. That was Taylor Chambers, and he's got that summit coming up. We really look forward to seeing him and hearing what's new. And, I'm a big believer in mindfulness. I say in both my books that mindfulness is single-handedly the most important thing you can do if you're an addict or a partner. Well, I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, a.k.a. Carol the Coach, and as we say at the end of every show, there'll be only one of you, so fearlessly have the courage to be yourself. And make sure to go to Taylor's website to find out more about fearless sexuality. We'll see you next week.